All right, so this is the first video in hopefully a long series of my journey with a new lifestyle. Oh, that's really weird. Journey with doing something completely different and out of my comfort zone. I am on day 8 of being vegan, following a whole food plant-based diet, which I had given 9 days ago. Really had no thought or desire to do. So I want to share a little bit about my story, what I've recently led me to this, what's led me to this. And I thought I would do like these little videos every now and then to kind of track my progress, see how it goes. Maybe it'll help me to be accountable to myself to in following it, and then also maybe be helpful for somebody out there who stumbles on it. Or any of my friends and family wondering what's going on with me. All right, so a little over 3 weeks ago, I hadn't been feeling very good. I've been struggling since we moved to Michigan about a year and a half ago. I've always had issues with gestational diabetes. I had it with all of the kids, and then started when I was I got pregnant with Haley when I was 19, so I had gestational diabetes with her, and with every subsequent pregnancy I had it, and I was either on metformin, or I think with Carson I did insulin, so I did shots, and I was always told I would I'd be diabetic. That was pretty much a given, and I knew that was something that I struggled with. I've struggled with weight for ever since having my first child. I've stayed fairly stable. I went up, obviously, over the years, but I wasn't someone who would get on a diet, lose a bunch of weight, gain it all back. I would occasionally diet to try to feel better. I would lose some weight, usually water weight, the 10 pounds or whatever water weight, depending on how large I was at the time. And maybe a little bit more. I think there were a few times I lost a little bit more on different things that I tried, but never was able to keep it off, or it wasn't sustainable for me. Well, now moving forward to the last year and a half, right about the time COVID hit, I started feeling really bad. I had an incident prior. Well, actually, it was during the COVID time where I had some pain in my abdomen. Ended up having a CT. They didn't say it didn't end up being anything. It was pretty extreme. Never found out what that was. I never went in for follow-up for it. It was a little scary. But I just kind of chalked it up to my body's doing something crazy. I don't know. I'm getting older, getting closer to 50. This is a little bit of maybe too much information for anybody out there, but I had a hysterectomy about 6 months after having our last son due to some abnormal cell growth. And so who knows if I'm menopausal or not? I have no idea, because I don't know unless I get blood work to know. So I kind of chalked it up to maybe some of the pain and stuff was associated with that. But about a year ago, like right around COVID, I started, I went and got a meter, started checking my sugars after I was eating. Kind of knew I wasn't feeling well. One of the checked, I hadn't eaten really well the first day that I checked. I knew that if it was going to be high, it was going to be high. It was like 340 after about 2 hours after eating. I don't even remember what I ate, but it was not like what a normal person in today's diet would eat. Maybe a burger, I don't know, side of something, I don't know. And my sugar was just like, my sugars were so high and I was feeling so bad. And then I kind of started monitoring it. I really wanted to go to the doctor, but then with COVID going on, I was like, now's probably not the time. I think I'll wait. So I put it off, like I always have. Every time I start to feel bad, I knew that I would need to make a change, and then, and I would put it off. I would just put it off. I'll get to it eventually. So I knew that what I was putting in my mouth certainly affected how I was feeling. So I would just avoid, eating, of course I would fall off the wagon, but I'd avoid the things that would really make me feel bad. So I've been doing that off and on over the course of the last year. And then I started tried to eat more, like, cut the carbs out, because I'd always been told, always since the time I sat down with a dietitian when I was 19 years old for the first time, about the diabetes and the gestational, and was told, the whole thing about portion sizes. Obviously, I would always overeat. That was the thing. I was always hungry. I was never satiated. I just never could feel satisfied. Even I just wasn't a thing. I do recall a time when I was shortly after I had, well, anyways, let me get back to that first. But, told cut back on the carbs, try to have a balanced meal. If you're having meat, make sure it's the size of your, well, now your cell phone, but like a deck of cards, whatever. I would eat that way off and on. But the carbs were always like, okay, yeah, your sugar spiked because you have carbs. So always constantly carbs. So anyways, in the last little bit here, I've been cutting out carbs and I would just feel bad. I would, so I'd have, Darren would hard boil eggs for me, or everybody was helping me out to try to, like, Allison, my oldest that lives with us, would help me with cooking and trying to do things. And so I cut carbs. I'm eating heavily meats, some smoked meats, because we found a really awesome place that had smoked meat around here, which probably is just absolutely awful for me. But so I'd have, maybe a hard-boiled egg and occasionally some smoked bacon. But, keto, low carbs, I would occasionally have some fruit. I didn't do any whole grains, any grains really at all. I got to where I, started to lose a little bit of weight. But then about 3 weeks ago, I was just not feeling well. And I started having chest pains. And well, before that, let me move back. I had some jaw pain, like some pain in my jaw that was kind of going into under my eye and up into my head, and it was a nerve. It felt like definitely a nerve. Kind of thought maybe it's a tooth because I have teeth that aren't so great, skateboarding, broken teeth, and then just not the best, and I have some dental work that I need to get done, so I thought that was it. But then it got like worse, like right in my jaw. So I would do the Google MD, right? We all do that, right? And everything would come up: heart attack, heart attack, heart attack, heart attack, and women especially, that's a thing. So didn't really think too much of it. And then I started having chest pain. I wasn't doing anything. I was sitting on the sofa. We'd gotten done with school that day, I think, because we homeschool. If you don't know me or know what I do, we homeschool. And sitting on the sofa, and I started having a tightening in my chest. And it wasn't crushing like you'd think a heart attack, but I was just not feeling well. I felt lightheaded and dizzy and not well. And I was having the jaw pain again. I was having some kind of numbness in my arm, heaviness in my arm and my left arm. So I just kind of I'm like, oh, if I tell the kid, I tell Allison, my oldest, she's going to freak out. I won't tell her. So I waited a little while, laid down for a little while in the bed back there where my cat's at. And it didn't seem to go away. It didn't get worse, but it didn't go away. So I'm thinking, I'm probably having a heart attack. This is probably the jaw pain is probably associated to, I'm reading on Google. That's probably what it is. So said something to my daughter. I didn't feel well enough to drive. I felt that bad. I felt that poorly. Kind of felt a little nauseous. So Allison drove me to the emergency room. On the way to the emergency room, I got really anxious. I think it was probably, now hindsight, I was probably having a panic attack because I'm like, if I'm dying from a heart attack, I don't want to go. I hate the doctor. Let's just get it out there. I'm just not a medical person, period. I'm not. Had lots of sick family. Love all of you who are in the medical profession, but I've just seen firsthand how there's no whole person treatment, probably 99% of the time. I'm a very controlling person. I'm not a very trusting person. And just because you have some credentials, to me, I just don't know. I think there's a lot of things where, yes, like one day we're told things are great and the next day we're told it causes cancer. So my radar's always on. And if I feel like our bodies are meant to do what they were meant to do, and I think a lot of times we try to, bless you, cat has allergies. He probably needs to go on a plant-based diet. Actually, that's a funny story. I'll have to share that later. He actually is on one. Because he's allergic to animal protein. Isn't that funny? So anyways, where was I at? Shoot. Trusting medical. So I'm like freaking out, right? My daughter's driving me to the ER. We get to the ER. I'm not really, feeling any better, not any worse. They get me in there. They hook me up to all the machines. And then my blood pressure's high, of course, because I'm freaked out. That's, of course, I have all of the telltale signs. I haven't been to the doctor, have an untreated diabetes. That's what they told me. untreated diabetes. So then they ask my family history. Well, like most of my father's passed away, and he wasn't in the best of health. Most of his relatives are all gone, all not great health. Lots of like not great choices in life. I used to be a smoker many years ago, so even though it was 20 plus years ago that I quit, if you even say anything about smoking, they're freaking out about that. So of course I have all the risk factors, right? And I have this pain, and they no explanation as to what it is. So they're like, probably having a heart attack. So so I'm thinking, in my mind, I thought I would go, they'd do an EKG, have some blood work done, and I'd come home, right? And if it's serious, they'll keep me, whatever. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm still not convinced that's what it is. I'm thinking I probably had an anxiety attack on the way to the hospital. That's why I was feeling a little bit worse there. So long story short, I was in a very small hospital that they wanted to do a stress test. They kept telling me that, okay, we need to have you do a stress test. They gave me is it nitrous pill? And my arm felt better. And that was like, oh yeah, she's definitely going down. You know, if she isn't having a heart attack now, she's going to have one, because all these symptoms, and then her family history, untreated diabetes, her arteries are probably full of everything. She's dying. You know, we got to help her out. So a couple problems. One, they couldn't do stress tests there because it's too small. Two, they wanted to transfer me to another hospital, but COVID here in Michigan at the time, about 3 weeks ago, every single emergency room was just like, it was just, nobody would take me. So, what was really interesting was, because the hospitals in Grand Rapids, they were not taking any patients that night, and neither was the one in Muskegon. It's closer to us. So then what's funny is the desk is really close to where I was in the ER, and I could hear them talking, and somebody did some call so-and-so in the whatever, and they owe me something, and they were able to get me transferred. I didn't want to go because by this time I'm not getting any worse. They did the blood work. They did, my EKG looks fine, but, they're saying there's 6 different. So I'm like, just let me go home. We can reschedule the stress test. I'll go in. They wouldn't let me do it. The ER doctor showed me on his phone, like, what my risk factors were. And they don't want you leaving the hospital if you're, I don't remember what the number was, but I was above it, obviously. So they finally got a deal, worked it out for me to transfer to Muskegon. They take me by ambulance. Have me hooked up to all the things. Now, mind you, I'm not having any more chest pain, maybe a little bit of the jaw pain. My blood pressure was high, but I was stressed out. I don't like doctors, right? So my blood sugar was high when I went in. So that was another thing that they're like, well, So they're like, well, we'll get you to Muskegon and they can give you a stress test in the morning. They get me into the ER. It was crazy, guys. I think, I don't want to make this video too long, but I think they told me there were only 7 rooms in the hospital that were open, but they had 17 admits coming out of the emergency room. So what that means is, like, they were just swamped. So luckily it wasn't a dire emergency for me. Like, I wasn't, having heart failure right at the moment. But so I was just, anyways, it was, they get me there, whatever, gonna have the stress test. I think the next morning, it just kept getting put off, and all these doctors kept coming in, and they've got me on all kinds of medication, and I feel just awful. Long story short, I didn't have a stress test because they said, what's the point? Because if I could possibly pass it, still have some blockage that they wouldn't see, so we might as well just do a heart cath. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to stick something in my, like, here's a little incision. It's a little tiny incision, which is like, it's not, they say it's not super invasive, but they stick that in, they put the cath in, that goes in, they shoot the dye into your heart. And they're like, well, this is the best way for us to see what's going on in there, and we're sure we're probably going to find. They told me all about putting a stent in. Odds are I'd probably have to have a stent. At this time, they still know nothing. None of my blood work came back. My heart, by all sense and purposes, like all the tests that they could do without doing anything invasive, was fine. Except for my blood pressure was a little high, which, again, I'm in the hospital. So, So I end up, I didn't want to do it at first. I'm like, but then the cardiologist came in and they're like, well, you have kids. And I do. I have 8 kids. My oldest is 27. My youngest is 8. And, is he 8 or is he 7? I can't even remember. Oh my gosh, whatever. But anyways, they're like, you're just young and you don't want to mess around with this, and and more or less didn't give me any choice. So we went ahead with the procedure, and of course they give you the percentages. Well, there's a chance you get a heart attack, there's a chance you get a stroke, and they're like, oh, it's only just such a small chance. Well, let me tell you, small chances. And I know God, this is the other thing. I'm not coming at this, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but I'm definitely a Christian. I feel like God has a plan in everything. But I also know that just because something has a small percentage doesn't mean that it won't affect you. Darren's dad had bypass surgery, 2% chance of having a stroke. He had a stroke. So, and then ended up not being able to talk or walk the rest of his life, and ended up in a wheelchair, losing his leg because of being in a wheelchair. And, I've seen a lot of, small percentages, we could win the lottery in bad situations. So, anyway, had the procedure done. Everything was fine. My heart is fine. The cardiologist said, and this is the best news ever, right? Well, we'll just go, and if it's good, then what have we lost, right? What's the big deal? Which in the end, I, even though I was surrounded by COVID patients, didn't get COVID, praise Jesus. But we won't talk about that. I know I could go on the COVID thing, but I'm not going to talk about that. But anyways, had the procedure done. Heart's fine. Actually, he said, I have the arteries of a 20-year-old, which is fabulous. Me being so obese, and, and they told me that I wasn't pre-diabetic. They told me I was diabetic. Okay, so then they're like, well, you need to do a follow-up. You don't have a doctor, we'll assign you a doctor. I'm like, okay, I'll go see this doctor, and then I'm going to look for somebody else, because I'm probably not going to like whoever they send me to, and I'm going to see if I can get someone who, maybe some holistic health or something, some alternative medicine thing. I don't know, because I'm not getting on medication. If I can, in my mind, the switch went off. I felt like a prisoner in the hospital to have this silly procedure done that, mind you, the bills are coming through now, and that little simple procedure in the end I think is going to be like $30,000. Didn't need to really happen. They probably could have let me go and then have this stress test and then monitored me for a little bit, but too much risk of me leaving and then me having a heart attack. Although I could leave and get hit in a car accident and die that way. But they wouldn't let me leave, guys. They wouldn't let me leave that. And I probably, in the end, I could have, really, okay. But anyways, I felt like a prisoner while I was there. In the end, I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I know that my arteries are fine, that my heart is fine, because then, moving forward, if I have any more pain, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm having a heart attack. But I still probably could have one, right? If that's the way God wants to take me out. But anyways, I went to go see this doctor, the follow-up. 2 weeks after, I went to the hospital. And that's where, leading up to where we are now, I sit down with him, and I got to tell you, I researched all the latest diabetes medications, because I knew that we were probably going to be discussing what they're going to put me on to try to get that under control. My A1C in the hospital, I think they told me it was 6.5, which I found out later it was not. It was like 6.2, which is not good, guys. It's not good, but it's pre-diabetic. It's not diabetic. So he says to me, we start talking. I'm ready to argue. This young skinny guy comes in, and he's actually not a doctor. He's a physician's assistant, as I had been told many times, because I kept saying I'm there to see Dr. So-and-so. But anyways, he sits down, we talk through everything, and I talk through, I think it's inflammation. I think I've had issue with pain, pretty severe pain. My jaw, it feels like my nerves are inflamed. It feels just weird. In my mind, I'm thinking, but what do I know? Because, right, I'm not a doctor. I just know my body, but I don't know anything, right? So anyways, so I'm ready to argue with him that I'm not going to take medication, or that I want to try something alternative, or let me give diet a go again. Let me cut out those carbs, high protein, low carbs. And then he talks to me about, have I ever heard of the movie Forks Over Knives? And I said, no. And he said, you need to watch it. I want you, so he more or less prescribed for me that I watch the video Forks Over Knives, or the documentary Forks Over Knives, and he got me information. He said, how open are you to cutting animal protein out of your diet? And I was like, okay, well, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know what, if it'll work at this point, he's not telling me medicine. My ears were open. But me being a vegan, if anybody knows me, you know, it's just kind of funny. I'm just not, I mean, I used to make fun of people who were vegans, honestly, you know, because I grew up hunting and fishing and, but anyways, so he gives me a pamphlet on plant-based eating and tells me to watch the video. So I really internalize all of that. I pray about it. My way home, I'm thinking, I don't know, Cheri being a vegan, I don't know. Okay, so here we are. This is what I want to document now. We are, you know, 8 days in. I have not felt hungry at all this whole time. I am a week and 1 day, and I have to make myself eat because it's so much food. I'm eating things that, it's just insane, guys. I know that initially I didn't feel super great. I had like really cloudy head. I had like almost like, I feel like a detox going on. But it's just, and then we, you know, have a large family. So trying to decide who's going to eat with me. Is it just going to be by myself? We have a budget we have to stick to. How are we going to financially do this? Because in my mind, I always thought that eating healthy, like eating just vegetables are expensive. So a lot of what we ate before was always frozen. I'd get it, you know, Aldi frozen vegetables. I can still do that. That's fine. But anyways, it's like relearning everything. But let me tell you, okay, so I had lost from the hospital. I started really watching the carbs, right? Once I got home, because I didn't know what else to do. So I really was watching what I was putting in my mouth. I lost about 10 pounds from the time I lost it, and then I've lost about 5. So I'm really close to losing about 15 pounds since I was in the hospital. But I've lost about 5 pounds in the last week to being on this diet. And I am walking now too. Every other day I'm walking. And I'm going to say, you know, stay with that if I can, you know, do it. I've even walked in the rain, which I would never do before. So anyways, I want to document this journey and how it changes me health-wise. I know I'm going back to the physician's assistant. It was a 30-day. He's like, he didn't know that I was going to even do it. So I just jumped in full. I like cut out oils. I'm not even doing oil, no fat, and not even low fat. I'm doing no fat unless it comes in the plants itself, like avocado and nuts and things like that. But it's crazy. It's just crazy. And I'm kind of educating myself, digging deeper into what we've always been taught. Like that for me, I had this connection with carbs and diabetes, and it's really fat. And there's so much information out there. And but what I'll say in this, and I'm going to wrap this up, is I'm going to probably get more preachy as time goes on if I keep feeling the way that I do. I never slept really well before, and I'm dreaming every night, so I guess if I'm dreaming, that means I'm getting into deeper sleep. That was not something that I did. I did it very infrequently, but I would wake up always exhausted. Like mornings, I hated them. And the last 3 mornings, I'm just like up and I'm ready to go without any coffee. And for me, that's, you know, I'm still drinking coffee too, by the way, but it's crazy the way that I feel and not craving the garbage. And so to think that healing our body or using food as medicine, it's a concept that you know, I'm learning, and I think it's going to be life-changing. I kind of think so. So this is the beginning, and I wanted to document it. And so right now, as of today, I didn't weigh myself today, but like I'm going to tell you, I'm what was I, 217.4 or 217.6 something the other day so there's where I'm at. So yeah, and I'm only 5'4", so that's a lot. I like to think I'm really muscular, but yeah, that's not true. So anyways, if you want to follow along. I think I'm gonna do this. I'll try to do it weekly. Every so often check in and let you know how it's going and share with you. Right now I'm using Forks Over Knives, has a meal planner, and that's what we started with. I will tell you though, because I thought it would be, we live kind of far away from the store, so we used to do our shopping for like almost the whole week, and we need fresh stuff, so we need to only do so many days. But I thought I would try, and I'm gonna I'm just going to blow it out there. This is for Misfits Market. It's not a good thing. But I've always gotten that Misfits Market ad on Facebook. And we got our first box today. I canceled it because it looked like I opened up the dumpster at like a grocery store. It was so bad. The box was like all, and I realized that that's probably not their fault, but half the fruit was spoiled, or some of the vegetables were. I was not impressed. So I'm just gonna, like right now, Allison and I are gonna go to the store and go get veggies. And I think Aldi for the most part does okay, but then I've got to go to, I do as organic as much as possible so far. I'd love to do organic for everything, but yeah, I've got to find all the new places to get stuff and plan. And I think the farmers market would be good too, but I have to plan ahead. So Meijer and Aldi and maybe Walmart. I don't like Walmart. So anyways, you all have a blessed one, and I will be back on again next time. Thanks for watching.